Guys, just want to welcome you back for a quick video. And today I just wanted to come on and do a quick demonstration for those of you that may be new to crafting, card making in particular, where you can give the card an illusion of a lot of dimension without actually having to add it. So what I'm going to do, it doesn't matter what inks, what stamps, what papers, anything like that. It doesn't matter what you use, giving it the illusion of dimension. This is a technique you can use with whatever papers you happen to have. The only thing that could be important is if the papers that you're using are a bit on the thinner side, then you might want to be careful if you're using glue to attach your layers. Glue, being that it's a wet medium, can warp and damage the paper, and a lot of the times when the paper's thin, the glue can show on the inside of the card or through the layers of the paper. So just one little note about that. If you have thinner paper, I would recommend using some kind of a double-sided tape. Like I said, if you're new to the crafting, you'll kind of get a feel for what you like, what you don't like, things that you prefer to use. So that's why I don't really want to get too bogged down in what I'm using. It's just more about sharing the technique with you guys. So, all right, so first one is just using the torn paper, which, you know, still kind of makes me sad a little bit to tear a pretty paper, but I still do it anyway. So let me do this. And this one I have picked for the bottom layer. So let me just go ahead and get that torn. And let me see where that's going to go and how much of this. So I'm just kind of getting a feel for where I want that top layer to go. So that I like. Okay, that looks good to me. So before I tear the second layer, I'm going to attach this first layer. All right. For me, it's easier to put the card upside down to line up these edges. So let me just do that really quick. Okay. Nope. Okay. So there's a little bit of an overhang, but I'll clean that up at one time. So that's about where I wanted it. So let me tear this piece. And again, I'm not bothered. This piece is going to be too wide for where I'm putting it. But that is perfectly fine because I will be trimming off the excess. So I've got it positioned where I want it to overlap on the pink. So now what I do to help make sure that I don't put tape in the wrong spot, I put one strip here on the edge of the bottom layer, and then I just start tacking down tape part of the way onto the top layer, if that makes sense. And if necessary, sometimes I will come in with a little dab of glue if I need to secure edges or something like that. And again, I need to go sideways here a little bit to get this edge lined up where I want it. Yeah, there we go. All right, then I can just press that down. And so now I don't have to worry about tape, you know, all over the place. So by putting that one piece down on the bottom layer here on the edge of the card, then I could just fill in with tape close to the edge here on the top layer. And then I don't have to worry about wasting tape on the part I need to cut off. So I got the little bit of the curl here. This is where I will come in with that small dab of glue. So I am strategic in my glue use when it comes to the crafting. Whoop. And I know it's on the bottom layer, but I also don't want it to show through the top And this top layer is a little bit thinner than the cardstock that's on this bottom layer. So that's a little bit too much. Sorry, I know I'm just cleaning up these edges here. As long as you have the edges tacked down, the rest should hold in place. The only exceptions to that would be if this was like a glitter cardstock, then one, it's thicker. Glitter cardstock typically is thicker, so then I would have used glue here because sometimes it's hard for tape to stick to the glitter. And already, with just these torn layers, you already have the illusion of dimension just by the edges of the paper. Second one, it's a little bit more dramatic of an example of adding dimension without adding dimension. So let me get my extra cardstock. Let's see, I wanted that on the top. So, all right. So going once again with the torn edge. Yeah, no, let me leave that over there. Okay. Let me tear my bottom layer. Okay. A little bit too stark there for me. Whoops. Let's see, where is that going to fit? Okay, yeah, let's just nick that little bit off. And let's get that bottom layer positioned, which I know this looks very much like the last one. Okay, all right, but before I attach this one, here's where you're going to get that extra dramatic allusion to depth. I am going to, now this I'm going to do off camera because my little felt, or not, it's not felt, foam is starting to shed. So just by inking that edge, it makes this paper look so much thicker, and it gives the shadow effect to make it look like this paper is elevated off of the card base. And that's just by adding ink. So if you see what I mean, let me bring this guy back. Here you have the torn paper without, you still get that sense of dimension, but adding the ink to the edges gives you that extra dramatic illusion of dimension without having any. But in any case, like I said, here you have, it looks like it is so much thicker that it is coming up off of that card base. So now let me do that first. Okay. And I think I want a little more. You can always tear off a little more depending on what you're doing if you don't quite like the way that first edge came out in your layers. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Okay. All right, so once again, now this is a thinner paper, so I got to be a little bit more careful with having both edges, or all the edges on both pieces of cardstock. Now you get some really, really good depth showing on this cardstock without it being any fatter or any more dimension than was on the first one that I did where I didn't ink. And that's it. All that dimension from two things, paper and ink. And that's it. And that is what I love about this. So for this one, I'm going to come in with the square stamp. And do the similar layout as that last one. And again, no sweat if it's not perfect. I've only used 4 things: a card base, 2 pieces of paper, and ink. And now you have a whole ton of dimension, or the appearance of dimension, on your card. And this one is not going to involve tearing the paper, but I will trim these down. I like to leave a white edge on the card base, our bottom layer down, and again, just that little bit of the card base showing through just to give like a border. And now, even without the torn paper method, you can get that look of dimension without doing anything other than layering your pages or your papers. Yeah, let me move that. All right, so let me get some tape. And so that's our card base. Here is the top layer. And again, I'm going to do my epic measuring and eyeball the placement to get a relative idea where this side, this edge should come down. That's a little low. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. My goal is just to get it as even as possible by doing the eyeball method. So here we have 2 layers of paper, no torn edge, but you still get the illusion of depth by inking up that edge. Makes it look like that top layer is lifting right off of the background just by adding ink to the edges. And again, it doesn't have to be the torn edge. This is something I'm going to do off my desk. I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to distress the outer edges of the cardstock itself, again to show another way of giving the illusion of dimension without actually having any. I will ink the roughed up edges and sometimes I won't. But for today's purposes, I'm going to, just for the sake of the demonstration. All right. I forgot about the big flecks from the cardstock. All right. So, no torn edge, ink used to build that illusion of dimension. Let me bring this down actually. Sometimes I forget I have tracking. I'm so used to doing stuff through editing that I forget I actually have a zoom on my camera. So let me do that. And then you guys can get a closer look at what we just did. Okay. So here on this card, ink on the edges gave that top layer the look of dimension, like it's coming off of the background. Then going in and scraping and inking the edges of the card itself also makes it look like this card is really thick, and it's not. Let me see which way my hands are going. So to look at it from the top, it looks like a big fat card. Not at all, not even a little bit. And I didn't even do the sentiment yet. Although I don't think I can do the stamping right on this background just because that's really busy. I will, off camera, I'm not going to do it now because you've seen me stamp with both the stamps to get the idea. But that is a fat card, but not really. So that was that example. And then recapping the other 2. Again, even without the ink, with the torn edge and layering the papers on top of each other, but again, you don't have to. This would still work and give the illusion of dimension, even if you kept your edges straight and you just layered the papers on top of each other. Still gives you that sense of dimension on the card, but doesn't have any. Still flat. And then the final one was torn paper edges, inked up, and that gives it a big vibe of dimension, or like they're just coming right up off of that card base, and they're not. And again, there's like no dimension to this card. So 3 examples of ways to make your card look like you've got a lot of dimension without really having any. Let me zoom back out. There we go. Well, not too far. Not too far. So hopefully these techniques helped you out, gave you something new to try, or gave you something to practice with if you are new to the crafting. Because you're using only 2 pieces of paper in each example, it gives you a lot of playtime in stretching out the paper crafting supplies that you have, because you still have all the scraps that you could come in and put on another project. So, you know, nothing is wasted, even when you're doing things where you're tearing the paper. You still have a lot of use in those papers. So like I said, simple ways to add interest and dimension, or the appearance of dimension, to your card without actually wasting a lot of cardstock. And you can come in and finish these all off with minimal. You could just do a few gemstones, you know, just pop a few little gemstones on there. Especially the clear ones are really good to work with, because they will pick up the color of the paper beneath them, if that makes sense. So I added 3 little gemstones, and still you will not have any trouble putting something like this through the mail. But if that still seems like too much dimension for you, then again, like I said earlier, you can come in and you can use something like these little pop drops, or the pops of color, or the Nouveau drops, where it's basically like a glitter glue, and when it dries, it's stuck right to the paper and it doesn't add any dimension hardly at all. Certainly not anything that would cause trouble at the post office and running through their sorting machine. So just a few elements, and you have a card that people may think that you spent a lot of time on, but you really don't. You know, if I'd have not been doing a demonstration of it today, these cards would have been done in just a few minutes each. That's really about all it takes to put something like this together. So now that card would pretty much be done, ready to go. It could be mailed, no issues, and you're off and running and ready to make the next card. So for bulk purposes, if you have to make a bulk set of cards, any one of these will work really well. And because you're using the different papers, it makes every card look completely different. That's the one thing that I like most. And a lot of why I just do what I consider freehand. You can take a similar concept or similar layout, and they will look completely different based on the papers or the elements that you're adding to it. But it doesn't have to be a lot. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. And like I said, if the information of what I used specifically is not out at time of filming, I will get it into the description shortly thereafter. So in the meantime, you guys take care, stay safe, and I will definitely be seeing you in the next video.